Good afternoon, viewers on YouTube and everywhere else. I am Mr. T, like some already are calling me, or Mr. T for long. And I'm together here with a guy that has a name that I have a hard time pronouncing in English. So how should I call you? Uh,
Um, hey, you can just call me Joran.
Joran. Like, okay. Hi, by the way, welcome. So one of the perks for people who don't know what we're doing, one of the perks of having a YouTube channel that is growing is that some people are sending you stuff to your doorstep, asking you if you want to take a look at it, and I'm always happy to oblige, of course, because Dungeons and Dragons, after all, is our great passion in life. It's the reason we get up in the morning and we go to bed. Um, so, first question to you. I'm gonna go straight off the bat here. First question to you is I've gotten this book, but I'm not gonna say anything about it right now. If I would give you 1 minute to pitch, what is this book? What is this campaign setting? Why should people be interested in it? And why, of course, should people help you kickstart this thing? Take your time. Just think about like what would you say if I gave you 1 minute?
1 minute. Wow. Well, I think people that are interested in old school role playing, that are interested in more realistic campaign settings that have the ambition to go a bit deeper into the cultures and the backgrounds of the people. I think people that are interested in that, together with the traditional stuff combined with some new and interesting twists and variants. I think those people should fund us on Kickstarter.
All right, so you have a Kickstarter active right now, if I'm not mistaken. Right? There is a
Yeah, that's right.
Kickstarter for this book.
Maybe you can put the link below.
Yes, I will, of course, put the link below. And I'm looking something up. So you are speaking about old school Dungeons and Dragons. That's one of the first things I hear because people who watch my channel know that I am a big fan of old school Dungeons and Dragons. And one thing I really like about this book. So I've gotten this book. I've read all the way through it, by the way, cover to cover. I like a lot of the stuff in here, and the major thing I like about this thing is the artwork. And I'm just gonna flash it like this. This is a barbarian, the barbarian artwork, and I don't know who drew this, but the guy who drew this is probably somewhere here. For me, I know a lot of people in fifth edition right now are used to color pictures drawn with computers and stuff like that, but this for me is amazing. So congratulations on that part. So yeah, what made you decide to first of all create this book? How long have you been working on this book, and why did you send me this book? And just talk a little bit about it, what it actually is, and what it can bring people.
Sure thing. So we started this project about 6, 7 years ago. I think 2011. And we started it after I actually went to visit America, and we visited a small game store there. And there I bought. I actually have it. And there I bought this.
Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
Monsters Manual
some
2.
advanced Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Well,
Really old school.
really old school. You know where we live. Well, you live in Belgium. We live in the Netherlands. There's a very small market here for old school secondhand Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And I thoroughly enjoyed reading through it and seeing all the awesome stylized images. It reminded me very much of a simpler time, um, and we started writing the campaign setting immediately. And I worked on it for I think about a year, and then I started to get my friends in, and they were enthusiastic about it as well. And we pooled some money and some resources, and we got some artists involved. And well, from there we finished. Well, we went
Sounds
on
like
to
sounds like a heck of a lot of work.
it
uh,
is a lot of work. It is
so,
a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun work. But it's a lot of work to do. Yeah.
so tell me a little something about like the setting itself. I see some races in here that we already know, of course, dwarves, elves, if I'm not mistaken, goblins even. humans, of course, but I also see a half dwarf, which I am really missing in Dungeons and Dragons right now. So I'm actually using the half dwarf in this book for a character I'm playing myself. Um, so tell me a little something. Why those races and why the half dwarf and why a goblin or is there a goblin here? No, a
The
null,
goblin,
a null. I was talking about
yeah,
the null.
the goblins are one of the enemy
Yeah,
races.
yes. I see you have gone for the null
Yeah.
as a playable race, like within the standard races. I actually
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy that because normally the standard race is dwarf, elf, half elf, human, and then in here there's some other races that are belong to the standard races, which I really enjoy.
Well, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the book features 12 playable player character races. Most of them were selected pretty much out of default because they're such popular fantasy races, such as the halflings and the elves and the half elves, and of course, humans are pretty much mandatory. But I always felt part of me was always disappointed in the fact that there's so many races in edition 3.5 that have either monster levels or level adjustment, and that really deterred players from choosing them as their character. So some of those races we felt could have a very interesting place and a very interesting niche and culture in the setting, and we redesigned those races to actually be played right from the bat, except for bugbears, who you can play with a +1 level adjustment.
Okay. So now you said it. So it is a 3.5 book, right? Or 3.0 third edition book.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's a bit a cross between Pathfinder 3.5 and some of our own introduced
Okay,
house rules.
that's actually the first thing, the first problem maybe I have with this. I am an old school Dungeons and Dragons player. I've started playing in third edition, but I've also played Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Never played first edition. I need to
You
go and play.
haven't? Well, you
I
should
need
try
to
it.
go and play first edition. So I was reading through this, and immediately I was like, "This doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work." And then it came to me, "Oh, this is third edition. This is not fifth edition." What made you decide to go for a third edition slash Pathfinder book in a world where we have to admit that fifth edition right now is pretty huge.
Yeah, well, fifth edition is pretty awesome. We're very interested in ourselves. We've been trying it out. We've been playing a little bit of it. But if you're a small production company like we are, it's sort of like starting to film your movie on a video cassette. While at some point there's also DVDs coming out, or basically programming a game for the Super Nintendo while the N64 is coming out a couple of years later. It took so long for us to do the design and the writing and the production that Dungeons and Dragons caught up with us, and because fourth edition was such a disappointment for them,
uh,
they went right ahead and went straight ahead to fifth edition. So that's why there's even two editions between our book and what we're up to currently, what D&D is up to currently.
yeah, it's a little bit like a film director who goes, you know what, I'm gonna film this on tape because I like it, and I actually respect that a lot. There are still movie directors, triple A movie directors who choose to film on tape. By the way,
Yeah, Tarantino, for example, he did The Hateful Eight on tape. That was awesome.
um,
But yeah, for
so
us it was practical. It was practical. We had this and it was done, and we wanted to completely finish this before moving on to anything else. But it's not that we're not open to other games and other versions of the game. We're actually pretty inclusive, and we actually would enjoy our game being translated into different vessels.
yeah, after all, it's actually not that hard to translate something from third edition to fifth edition. If it was to fourth edition, you would have a problem, but to fifth edition, I mean, things don't scale as much in 5th edition, so you just don't scale it as much. And I mean, I'm using the half dwarf right now in a 5th edition campaign, and I'm reading it, and I can almost entirely use it in my 5th edition campaign. So it's pretty
Yeah,
easy to.
I never understood Wizards' dislike for the half dwarves as a race, but in our
Yeah,
campaign, yeah,
there's half orcs, there's
dwarves are
half
being
elves,
close.
there's this,
Yeah,
there's
no half dwarves.
yeah,
There's even
lots
half lynx, but no. Yeah,
because I don't know, mating with an orc or mating with a dwarf.
that's fine. But
uh,
as long as they have beards, that's racism, man.
so let's just talk about the contents of this book, because we're talking about this book, by the way, On the Shoulders of Heroes, which is a great title, by the way, and there is a good reason to this title. I think the background for this title, what's in here, is very cool. I mean, it's a world created by heroes, and you as a level 1 character are standing on the shoulders of heroes. Long story short, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about. Now I closed the book. I lost my page. About the contents in this book, there is, of course, there's playable races. We talked about that, 11 or 12 playable races.
If I'm right, there's 12.
Yeah.
You should
and
check here.
and how do I need to see this? If I play an elf in 3rd edition from the player's handbook, right? Or I play an elf that's in here. How different would an elf 3rd edition or an elf pathfinder or an elf in here? How are you trying to make that elf part of this world, which is called Balog, by the way? Balog,
Yeah.
am I pronouncing that correctly? Because there's 2
Yeah,
points
I
in
think
the
I think you did, but I think a lot of the names and the words are very hard to pronounce in English anyway. So we'll just take anything that sounds reasonable to us.
All right.
Yeah, I think that we've done some interesting redesigns. We sort of zoomed in on some cultural, interesting defining cultural traits. Uh, I think if you're playing an elf, especially, well, I think in 3.5, the elf racial rules were considered pretty weak, pretty tame. So we gave them some inherent magical powers, which I think is cool. We've pretty much focused the elfin history on one side. There's a bit of reluctance to accept the old traditions of the past, because the elves actually came out of
This is Balog, by the way. Just keep talking.
the elves actually came out of a long and devastating war that drove their clans apart, or at least that's what they believe. So the elves are sort of reluctant to show to which clan they belong. The elves, in comparison to most of the human and dwarven clans and communities, are a very matriarchal society. So they're female-led, basically, which is in contrast with all the traditional fantasy.
Yeah. So if I'm getting this correctly, you actually take some of the classic races, make them your own to put in a new, darker themed world, maybe even. That's the vibe I'm getting when I'm reading this book. That it's a little darker than the high fantasy we're used to from Wizards of the Coast. So, which is, by the way, great. Also, something I really laughed at when I saw it was, there's a paladin that's smiling at you because he severed an orc head, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, I've never seen a paladin actually do this, because I'm always used to the paladins. This is the knight in shining armor, you know. He would never do this in Wizards of the Coast books, and you just put this in the artwork, which I think is absolutely great. Which also gives me the feeling that we're coming from the races now to the classes, that you took some of the classic classes like Paladin, Fighter, Wizard even, I think. And how did you go about making those classes your own? Did you change anything about those classes to make them be a part of not Faerun, but Balog?
In some aspects, our classes refer back to how fantasy classes started. So they follow a lot of the classical tropes that you're used to. So if you're a fighter, you can be several different types of fighter, but yeah, you're going to recognize a guy who's a fighter probably. Same for barbarian and same for sorcerer or wizard. You're going to get that instant recognition that that's the role that character is going to play in this adventure in this world.
Yes. For example, my favorite class ever. Everybody knows that I'm a fighter guy. So this is a fighter, right? I mean,
Yeah,
when you see
that's a
this
fighter.
guy, when you see this guy walk up to you, you know he has an axe, he has a chainmail, he has a helmet, he has a short sword. That's a fighter. uh, that's the kind of grounded stuff, old school stuff I really like about this book. It's actually great that in all the classes look like they are a member of their class. So stat-wise, ability-wise, take a look at what maybe one of the classes, Ranger, Paladin, some great Ranger artwork again. I keep showing off your artwork, by the way. I just love the artwork in here. I'm using it for
You
my
can
own.
probably get them in on the screen. That will be
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. I will do this
In
here.
post production, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
So ability-wise, are you doing stuff with the classes that make them maybe I don't know take some magic away from mages or because it's more dark themed?
our world does have a lot of magic. It's not a situation where there's it's not a world where there's no magic left. Magic is the story is that um, millennia back, the world used to be created by the god, was created by the gods, and everything was extremely magical. And people have lost the ability to use that magic, but still, there's great heroes left, and there's artifacts left, and there's mages left. Um, Very powerful mages and very powerful remnants of magical places, magical structures still left in the world. But we mostly, with the classes, we mostly tinkered with the skill sets a bit. We combined some skills because we felt that they were underutilized in game.
Hmm?
And we gave some classes the ability to find traps. We always thought it was silly that only the rogue could look for traps. While if you want to play a skillful character, either a ranger or a bard, then the party would also need a rogue to find traps. While, yeah, they pretty much replaced the rogue in many other aspects. So we felt that if you want to play a bard or a ranger that can also look for traps, we want you to have access to trap finding.
Okay, okay, cool. So the next thing I encounter is something I think is really cool. It's the languages. The thing you are doing with the languages is you are giving people penalties while trying to speak a language if I don't know how to say this, but how good you are in the language matters. It's not just you know the
Yeah,
language or you don't know the language, like in 50 Dungeons and Dragons, like you know common or you don't know common. And in a realistic setting, that would be I know a little French, I know a
yeah.
little German. So you are actually doing that in this book, which I think is really great. We haven't talked about this yet, but I think, like for example, Buggen. That's a language. I don't know who speaks Buggen. Um,
Bugbears.
yeah, Bugbears speak Buggen. So you can have a close connection to it, a distant connection to it. There is a difficulty to it. There are subtypes to the language, which all give you penalties. And for example, if you are trying to speak Draconian, sorry, you can have a distant connection, and then you get a -8 penalty on checks making that language. That's something. Are you doing this across the entire campaign setting? Those kinds of more realistic approaches to some things.
Well, I do think it's very important for the suspension of disbelief that you feel that the world around you is real. And maybe this is something that we non-native English speakers encounter more than, for example, someone in America who speaks English most of the day. But while we interact with Dungeons and Dragons material, we're forced to do so in a language that is not our native first language. So that made me think a lot about how do we interact in daily life with people that speak other languages, and how do we utilize language to convey messages. And to be honest, you are holding the beta version of the book. The language rules have been
True.
somewhat simplified, because even though we did feel that they represented reality pretty closely, they were also very complicated and hard to keep track of, which is what we got from the feedback from our first readers. So we're still toying with that basically, but we do think it's important to have a realistic, or to have an expansive language system, also to
Yeah.
further well, showcase the difficulties that races in a fantasy world would have communicating with each
Mm.
other in such a huge world with all these different races and monsters and creatures. And we think it makes a lot of sense that there's a lot of communication problems there, and
Yeah,
we
of
think that, that
course.
can be very, if you enjoy that, it can be a very interesting part of your campaign setting, and a translator can be a very useful addition to any party. So we
Mm.
thought that was a very interesting part of that you can add to your game if you so desire. The rule language was optional. We wanted to give people the freedom to play the game as they want to play the game.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think these kinds of, and when I read cover to cover, I see a lot of these things show up. These things that make me feel like there's some realistic stuff going on. Although it's an unrealistic setting with dwarves and elves, there is some realism, uh, at least a realistic feeling to it. It's not always realistic, but there's at least a realistic feeling. Like, yeah, if there's a lot of goblins and trolls and orcs and dwarves and elves running around, you are going to have some kind of language barrier. You are going to have people who say something, the other guy misinterprets it, and you got a fight going on in a bar or something like that. Classic tavern brawl.
It
Next
writes
thing,
itself, right?
next thing in your book is so we covered some classes. You know, we got this language stuff, which is I think is really great. We're not talking about everything, by the way. There's a lot more in this book, so go kickstart these guys' book if you want to know what else is in this book. Also, indeed, it is a beta version of the book. I'm holding the beta in my hands, so not everything in here is finished, and we have talked about some things that they are going to change. Some of my concerns. So now, something I always like to see in a campaign setting book or any book of that matter is feats. And something I like even more, which I also like in the Xanathar's Guide to Everything. That's the major thing I like in Xanathar's Guide to Everything is racial feats. I absolutely love racial feats. For example, Earthbound, Dwarf, Gnome. You have Tremor sense. That's for me. I think that's such a small thing, and there's not a lot of times you actually get to use that. It's like a dwarf in 5th edition gets Stone Cunning, which is a feature you don't get to use very often, but when you get to use it, it's just amazing and makes you feel like a dwarf. That's okay. I'm always talking about dwarves, by the way. Dwarves and fighters are my cup of tea, so I'm always looking at that part of a campaign setting. So I really like the feats, and then this is my major concern about this book, right? And that's the campaign setting itself. It is not bad at all in any way. I mean, I really love Belloc, and maybe it's a compliment for you guys that I would like to see more of Belloc. So you talk about Belloc. I'm just going to rant a little bit right now. Okay. You talk about Belloc, and you guys are having a very good writing style, and I'm really in it. I'm really drawn into this world. But then you get to a certain part where it says places of interest, which almost all campaign settings have places of interest. And something I really miss is, for example, I have this. I'm also going to put this on the top, just very this dark tower in here, right? Um, so you, which looks cool. which looks actually cooler than the tower in Lord of the Rings. There's floating parts in the tower, so it's very cool. But then you have this very small piece of text saying that somewhere in the world there is a dark tower, the Tower of the Bar. Dwarves don't want to go there because there used to be a evil wizard, witch, or something, wizard or witch, in there. A very small piece of text, and I just feel like I'm being left out a little bit. I mean, I would, if you could dedicate an entire page to this tower alone. I mean, you could really get people to get maybe create a villain or something that is in that tower. Maybe create an entire adventure for that tower, because when I see it, I want to go there as a dungeon master and as a player. I want to go there, but I'm not getting for my feeling. I'm not getting enough information on those. There is a lot of places of interest that just get these small pieces of text. They're very interesting when you look at them, but when you read the text, it's like, okay, there is a fort there, and there is a forest there, and what is there? What exactly is there? So, are you planning on expanding on this campaign setting, or giving people more in the final version of the book?
Well, it was a deliberate choice on our part to explicitly or non-explicitly keep things non-explicit. Uh, mostly, mostly because we wanted the world to be inclusive, and we wanted things to be available for parties of all levels and types. So if we write that there's a level 20 wizard sitting in the tower, and he's a pyromancer, and we put down his stats, and we note down that stone guardians or the glass guardians that run amok around the tower, then if they're based on a level 20 party, then and you want to visit it with your level 6 party, then you're going to have to reinvent everything and have to change everything. While if we leave it open to your imagination as a dungeon master, you can place whatever you want there. It's sort of like an open-ended film. We don't dictate what the ending is going to be. The ending or the situation is under your control as a dungeon master, and that was a practical decision, because if we spend a bit more time on every location, we are going to use more paper. It's going to cost us more work. So that's practical in one. We wanted to show as much as possible. We want to show a little bit of everything, if possible at all, and then we can later expand on things that are popular in either adventures or in online materials or in additional books to be written later. That's the practical reason. And I think we mostly did this because we looked at the audience of dungeon masters of edition 3.5, and those are all playing for years and years now. So they all have their own books full of monsters and their own preferences, and they've got their own style. And we wanted people to be able to incorporate their own style into it and use some of their own preferences. However, should we later choose to convert to another edition, then it might, with less experienced players, then indeed it might be very possible that we're going to give at least more basic information on everything, at least what type of monsters you could expect for like low to mid tier to high level, maybe items that you could specifically find somewhere, and just give people a bit more to go on. Although it would be impossible with all the places of interest we have to write an adventure in this book about everything. It's just, it would be
Of
too
course,
much
yes,
into
yes, yes, yes. But are you? I think you said in the past that you do have a small adventure you are running for promoting this campaign setting.
Well, yeah, we're working on two adventures at the moment. One of them called the Silver Swans, which is about a small village in Merma. You should have it on your map, and They have a pond with 2 swans in there, and the day after the swans arrived, they found a large vein of silver in the mountains. So the people in the village believe that the swans are the heralds of good fortune, and they worship the swans like minor spirits, and bring them food and offerings of other items. And then one day, one of the swans is suddenly missing. The female swan is missing, and the male swan is very heartbroken about this. And the players are hired adventurers adventurers hired by the village elder to actually track down the swan in the foothills.
Okay, cool, interesting. Um, so yeah, that's actually what I mean is that it's not that it's not interesting because it is very interesting, and that's why I want to see more. Um, for example, this tower or some of the places of interest in here invite me more to use it in my own campaign than to go into Balok and use it. You know where I'm going with this? So this tower and other places in here really invite me to put that in my own campaign setting because, like all players who play a very long time, I have my own homebrew campaign setting. Um, so I'm actually taking elements from this book and putting it in my own campaign setting, and that's where this book really comes in very handy because I'm just gonna after of course the entire campaign setting which has a lot of places of interest. You of course go to the gods. You have information on the gods of the realm. There are some gods in here with some great artwork. Again, I know I keep saying this, but this is just freaking amazing. This is just amazing. So there is a lot of information on the gods. So if I have this book on me when I'm done when I'm DMing. So some every now and then I just take it out and take something from your campaign setting and put it in my own campaign setting. For example, a god or something. If I need a neutral good god, I just go, oh, I need a god, and I just use that one. I just read through it. Then of course you have some monsters in here with stats. You have some very cool. I really wanted to talk about this. I can't find it. Some very cool magic items, but especially one very funny cursed item, and that's that ring. You actually have a ring in here that uses up more ring slots. So the only function this ring has is that you cannot wear any other ring. I
Yeah, it's
I
pretty evil.
this is one of the coolest cursed items I ever heard of. I mean, it's a ring, and you can really drive your players crazy for searching what this ring actually does. Nobody really knows what this ring actually does, but all it does is just making sure you don't wear any other rings, which is so freaking funny. Players will always keep searching that. And then something I am using already, I've used it for, I think I rolled on this table. Every dungeon master likes random tables. That's just a fact. Every dungeon master likes random tables. I rolled on this table, I think 3 or 4 times now since I have this book. It's a critical miss table. Something I don't think it's a fifth edition yet, official fifth edition yet, a critical miss table. And I have to say there's some very funny stuff in here, especially the way you split up blunt, melee, blunt melee, magic, piercing melee, slashing melee, ranged, thrown, unarmed strikes, non-humanoid unarmed strikes, and all of these gets a random table with when you roll a critical one, you roll on this table, and then it says some kind of outcome, and sometimes it's just something neglectable, and sometimes it's like the funniest thing ever. You trip and you fall prone, or your spear just goes against somebody else and he has disadvantage on his next attack or something like that. It's just very fun. Are you planning on expanding more on these tables or other random tables? Uh,
Well, on our Facebook page, we have a number of non-combat encounters for different environments, which can be used for any edition because they're non-combat. So again, as with most of the places of interest, we give you the idea, we give you the spark, and you expand on it yourself, and you make out of it what you want. And I do really enjoy random table. Although Wizard of the Coast, I think, does not really enjoy the fact that the critical miss does tends to slightly slow down your game because there's additional rolls, there's additional looking up. They're not for everyone, I say, but especially if you're a small group and you enjoy rolling random stuff and you enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
putting your faith into the hands of the dice, then hey, then it's for you. But it's not for everyone. But I respect that, and it's just a small part of it. But
Yeah,
it's
I
like with most things of the book, like you say, you can use whatever, like with the language rules, like with the critical miss table, like with the feats and monsters and locations. You can basically pick out of the book what you want. It's meant to inspire you,
and
and
it
if
actually
you
does that. It actually, sorry to interrupt you, but it actually does that for me very well. I mean, you sometimes I read like two pieces of text in here, and then I'm like, I'm using that, and I'm doing my own thing with it. Like a lot of these random mistables, they have stuff from third edition in there, but if you just read between the lines, you can use it for fifth edition, easy. Um, and indeed, with the realistic approach to the game, is there is a table in here. I don't know precisely where it is. There is a table in here with how old your character is while when he or she is a part of a certain class. Like you split up the classes in e, basic class, a mediocre class, and a very hard class. So like mages tend to have a older starting age than fighters, because fighters they start training when they're 10 years old, and when they're 20, 21 year old, for a human they are well trained level 1, level 2 fighters. So but a
yeah.
mage sometimes has to study for 40, 50 years, and then he has 20 more years to go do mage stuff, and then he dies. So you actually split this up in all the races and all the classes uh, I think I hear my dog. Is that my dog in the background? Um, you have all the races and all the classes have a starting age for each class, which I really think is really great in this book and really inspires me when I'm creating my own character. Inspires me to roll on that table and have this. So
I'm
congratulations
glad
on
to
that
hear it.
part. Yeah, the
Thanks.
book really does a lot of great stuff for me, for helping me inspire my own game, because I like old school Dungeons and Dragons. So I like to more realistic. I tend to not use that word too much because Dungeons and Dragons is not realistic. Let's face it. And something last thing I actually want to talk about is something you guys do, which Wizards of the Coast stopped doing after third edition, and that's this. They've put that in third edition, and that's one of the things I really liked in third edition. That's the races next to each other, and you do that on this page too. And we already talked about it. You are going to, if I'm correct, put this thing across 2 pages. If you, I don't know if you managed to do that, but I really like how you guys are
Yeah.
putting them next to each other. I don't know. I don't know. It's just those small things you do in this book really speak to me as a old school player.
Oh, thanks. I think they really help you get an impression of the size of your character compared to other characters.
Yeah. It's
And
it's a small it's a
yeah,
small thing, but sometimes in fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons, I'm always comparing it to fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, fifth edition you get a height and a weight, but reading it doesn't really do it for a lot of people. I mean, especially new players. A gnome. What's a gnome? Yeah, it's about yay high. Yeah, okay, but
yeah,
what's that? I don't know what inches are because I'm from Europe, so I don't know
yeah,
what inches are.
exactly.
So how
For
how
us,
big
it's
is a
like
gnome?
magic.
How big is a
Yeah,
gnome? Yeah, he's a little taller than a halfling. Okay, how tall is a halfling? Yeah, halfling is half as tall as a human. Okay, are humans normal size in Dungeons and Dragons? Yes, you're about our size. Okay, but you are 2 heads higher than me. So this is just so small things in this book that really that I really like. So is there anything else you like to finish up with? Like uh, people should go check out your Kickstarter. I'm linking it in the description below. Also, I'm linking your Facebook page in the description below. Maybe other links that are handy for people. I will put everything in the description below. So if you have anything to say to my precious viewers, go ahead. It's your time. I mean, your time to shine.
Thanks. Well, again, thanks for having me on. I hope that you guys enjoyed the material that Mr. T has shown you here. And if you do, please consider liking our Facebook page or even pledging on Kickstarter.
All
And
right.
we'll keep
How
going.
how much can people actually pledge? Is there a system?
Yeah. There's several levels of pledges that people can do. You can get a digital version of the book for 15 euros. You can you can get your first physical copy in the mail for 55 euros. That which includes worldwide shipping. And there are several other tiers, higher tiers that give access to sweet merchandise like a wooden set of 4d6, a T-shirt, and we've got some online D&D groups set up if you want to play with us online or want to chat to us on Skype. So we've got stuff to offer if you're interested. You can also hire me for a day to be your dungeon master.
Cool.
So yeah.
So that's in the pledge amount. You can hire you for a day to be your dungeon master.
Yep,
That's
yep.
actually a pretty good idea. I mean, what if an American guy does that? You go online
Uh,
probably.
well, Well, if I have stated on the Kickstarter that I am willing to travel to America for it, if they want to pay for my ticket and my hotel while I'm staying there. But if someone from America is generous enough to support that amount, I can imagine that we'll be playing via Roll20 online, and we can
Yeah.
either do one session or two shorter sessions.
Okay. So anyway, let me know how this goes, how your campaign setting goes with other players. I'm already using this book to my viewers. I'm very honest about it. My viewers, by the way, you guys know that if I don't like something, I will not review it. That's how I do things. If I don't like it, I will not put it on my channel. So if it's not on my channel either, then there's two options. Either I haven't read it yet, or I don't like it. That's just how it is. So I really like this, although I did have some concerns. I think they're pretty much cleared up right now. I did have some concerns. I liked it very much. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us, because it's so important for content creators to be able to talk to each other. Thank you, and maybe see you next time.
Cool, dude. Keep rocking and rolling.